All right. Well, I want to welcome everyone to today's live workshop, Busting Self-Publishing Myths and Making Your Book Launch a Smashing Success. So if you're a series indie author, you're in the right place. So real quick, introductions. Who am I? I'm Angela J. Ford. I am a digital marketer for indie authors, writers, and bloggers. And I got into this field because I've always been a creative. I was a musician at one point and I absolutely love writing. But as I was going along, I realized there really isn't a lot out there that helps people market their work, especially if you are a beginner and you don't have a huge budget. That's really where I really learn how to. So that being said, I offer expert guidance on setting up websites, social media, and of course, book launches. And I very famous the Amazon bestseller, The Five Warriors in Epic Fantasy, and it is book 1 of the 4 world series. And I'm currently on book 2. And now I'm going to turn it over to the amazing Jody. She's going to introduce herself and get started.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Should I wait for my slide? Yep.
All right. Can you see it?
There we go. There I am.
Perfect.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you guys. Thank you, Angela, for co-hosting with me. This is so exciting. I am a book editor and a writing coach and a publishing consultant, and I have very good genes. I'm actually much older than I look, so I've got about 20 years experience in book publishing. And I was one of those lucky people who just knew from an early age what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to work in books. I knew that New York City was the place to be. And so I packed up 2 weeks after college graduation and moved to New York with the agreement with my father that if I could find a job by the end of summer, I could stay and not have to move home to Pennsylvania, which I love Pennsylvania, but I wanted to, be in the big city. So I got my very first job at William Morrow, which is now part of HarperCollins, which is one of what we call the Big Five, the big five book publishers, which I'm sure eventually is going to be the big one when Random House eventually swallows up everything. And then from there, I moved to a book packager, also doing editorial work. A book packager is basically just like a publisher, except they deliver a finished book to a publisher. So they don't handle marketing or distribution or sales. But they do all of the other work, the design and the editing and the formatting and all that. So after that, I moved to a small niche publisher that's specialized in business books, which is how I got my specialty. And then I I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I always, babysat and did lemonade stands and, made friendship bracelets and sold them at lunchtime and all that stuff. So I realized that I could do editing on the side and get more money, which was great because publishing, for those of you who do not know, pays diddly. So that was a good little marriage of skills there for me. So I started doing some freelancing on the side while also working for the publishing houses. And then I started shifting more and more to working directly with authors, whether they're self-publishing or publishing traditionally, just because I like the direct contact with the author. I like being a bigger part of the process. I like sort of collaborating that way, which you don't always get to do when you're working at a book publisher. So that's me in a nutshell. Let's get started. If we could flip that, there we go. So I work these days mostly with self-publishing authors, indie authors, but I always like to tell my clients there's no right way to publish a book. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But I will caution you that publishing traditionally with a publishing house is not, it's just not a profitable model for authors. You're going to make more money in the long run in almost all cases self-publishing. So that's my recommendation when I'm asked. And sometimes when I'm not asked, I insert it anyway, because I think it's important for authors to know. So let's talk about why you want to self-publish. There we go. 3 reasons: control, time, and money. So let's break them down just a little bit. I've got a slide for each one of those. Control first. These are the things that you control. Basically, you control everything when you're self-publishing. But these right here, the title and subtitle, the cover, the concept and scope of your book, and the team members who you're working with, who's doing your editing, who's doing your design, who's doing your cover if you're not doing them yourselves. You choose all of that when you're self-publishing. When you're publishing with a traditional publishing house, that's not always the case. I had many authors over the years hate the cover that the publishing house came up with. And unfortunately, I mean, unless you're John Grisham or Brene Brown or one of these, big names, you don't have final say over the cover and some of these other things. And a lot of times it's the buyers at bookstores who are making these decisions. They're making these decisions by telling the salespeople at the book publisher, hey, this cover's not going to sell here. We're not going to buy, end cap space. We're not going to buy any of that with that cover. And then next thing you know, you've got a cover that you hate, but the booksellers like. So control is a huge issue. You'll hear me talk about that a lot as we go through. So that I think is the biggest issue, but the other two are important also. So if we can flip, Angela. Money. So you want to keep more money. That's a no-brainer, obviously. You want to set your own price. You don't want your price dictated by, the publishing house tell you, no, we'll never sell enough copies at, $5.99. We have to price it at $2.99. You want to be able to set that price, and you want to be able to determine that on your own without someone, telling you what or why. So also the royalty structure. You hear a lot in publishing about these huge advances that celebrities get, for example. And an advance is really, it's called an advance against royalty. And that means, you might get, well, if you're a celebrity, you'll get, let's say $2 million up front. But then you're not going to see another penny until your book sells enough copies that you would earn $2 million in royalties. Once those sales happen, then you'll start earning and accruing your royalties. So, Joe Schmo or Jody Brandon or Angela Ford is not going to get a $2 million advance against royalties. We're going to get, $500, $2,000. I mean, maybe even up to $5,000. But a lot of books don't, what we call in publishing, earn out, which means you'll get that money up front, but you're never going to see another penny. So self-publishing, yes, you're spending a little bit more money up front because you're getting your book. We'll talk about this, but you're going to get your book edited, and you might have to pay for an image to use on the cover or someone to do the cover. So those things you don't pay for when you're traditionally publishing. But once you're done paying those people or those fees at the beginning, everything you make, you're keeping. So it's really a more advantageous financial structure to publish on your own because you're keeping a lot more of the money. I mean, with Amazon, if you do the KDP program, their exclusivity program, there's a time when you're earning, I think it's like 70% and keeping 70% of the royalties. Whereas with book publishing, you're lucky if you're keeping, 20% max. So it's really, that in my mind, that one's also kind of a no-brainer. So, and then the timeline. Excuse me. Quicker to market. You're working on your own timeline. This goes back to the control. You're controlling that timeline. The average amount of time from the time a book is acquired by a publishing house until it's published on average is 18 months. That's a long time. And that doesn't count all the time after you've written the book and after then you've searched for an agent. That's just from the time the book is acquired. So if you're writing about, anything, of a timely nature, or if you're a fiction writer and you're writing, in a genre that's, the it thing right now, 18 months is a long time to wait. And who knows if that's going to be the it thing 18 months from now. Or I just worked with someone, for example, who was writing a book about social media. And she said, what do you think I should do? And I said, there's no way you can traditionally publish. I said, by the time that book comes out, your book is obsolete already. And then just think of all that you wasted. So she did an ebook and it was out in 3 months and, it's selling great. So you have to consider that also. And also revising and reprinting. A book publisher, let's say they print 5,000 copies of your book and 2,000 are sold and you need to make a major revision. They're not doing that. They're just simply not doing that unless it's, some sort of like libel issue or something like that. It's going to, cost them money. It's not happening. You're going to have to wait, a year, 2 years, whatever, in order for them to do an updated edition of your book. Whereas if you're doing it on your own, let's say I publish my book tomorrow and I find a typo on page 50. I can, upload a new document to Amazon the next day if I want. I can, there aren't thousands of books sitting somewhere. So I can just have that, re-uploaded, reprinted as needed. Nobody has to wait. So that I think is another huge advantage. And all of these you can see sort of like tie back with the control, which is really, 9.5 out of 10 of my clients tell me that that's really, the driving force behind their decision to self-publish. So those are the three big reasons that I think you should consider. And then let's just get into some of these myths, because I know that if you aren't super familiar with the book publishing world, I know that a lot of people consider self-publishing sort of, I call it the ugly stepsister of the publishing world, because it just used to leave such a bad taste in people's mouths because of vanity presses, honestly, where you were being charged to publish. And that's thankfully gone away, and self-publishing has become a much more acceptable and accepted part of our industry. So let's get into some of these. So I'm going to talk about the four big ones here that I hear most often. So here, myth number one, self-publishing is not real publishing. Well, that is just hobble squash, or whatever that term is. That is just simply not the case anymore. As I said, that used to be the accepted view in the book publishing world. And I admit that I shared it, honestly. And that was when self-publishing was it was new, and it wasn't like it is today. I mean, today you publish a book on Amazon or through Lulu or Ingram Spark or any of these. And I mean, you're going through the same motions that the book publisher is going to have that book published. You're not paying someone to do it. It's not vanity publishing. It is absolutely real publishing. And I would challenge just about anybody to look at a self-published book and a traditionally published book, and assuming that self-published book was published professionally, and by that I mean edited and designed, and not buying a template off of Amazon for the cover, but published professionally, you will not be able to tell the difference between the two. The paperweight is better than it used to be. So, you used to find self-published books with the paper was like, I mean, you could see through the paper, it was paper thin. So you knew immediately that book was not, published traditionally, and then people frowned on that. So we've come a long way, baby. So self-publishing is definitely real publishing. And I mean, it's absolutely a valid path to publication, or I would certainly not be recommending it to my clients each and every single day. So, okay, myth number two, self-publishing costs too much. So here's the thing. I'm sure Angela's going to get into the budget a little bit. You can spend very little. I mean, the sky's the limit. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars to self-publish. It's not necessary, but certainly you can do it depending on how much you want to advertise and all of those things. So we're going to get into just a couple of these little nitty-gritty things. So you are going to pay for upfront costs, editing and formatting and cover design and giveaways, products for giveaways, things like that. But you can control your own budget. You set your own budget and then you just follow it. So you can find an editor you can find an editor who's going to charge you $5,000, but you can also find a very good editor who's going to charge you, let's say, $300 or $500, and a proofreader who's going to charge you just, a couple of $100, which we'll talk about. At minimum, you should be doing that. So, I mean, you really can publish your book for, just a few $100s. And then again, remember, you're keeping all of that money. So yes, you're not paying anything to get published traditionally, $0 up front. But remember the advance against royalties. You're probably not going to see as much return on that, and you're giving up the control. So, I mean, it really, like I said at the beginning, there's no right way to publish. You just have to, sort of make your list of pros and cons and what you think makes the most sense for you right now and financially in the future. And I think that it's very easy to set a budget that is perfectly achievable and, is not going to break your bank and allows you to publish a beautiful professional book. So, All right, myth number 3. I can't make any money self-publishing. I hear this one all the time. Listen, unless you're a big name celebrity, book publishing is not going to make you rich. Certainly not overnight. Book publishing is going to help you build a platform so that now you've got, like Angela's working on a series of books. So she's working on book number 2 now. So now she has book number 1 out there, and then she's got book number 2. Well, book number 2 is going to get new people to buy book number 1 when they see book number 2 who maybe never read it. So you can sort of like build a platform. That's for fiction. For nonfiction, you're going to build yourself a platform. You know, you're going to use your book to not just make money, but get credibility and visibility and all of these other things that business owners want to do. So most of my clients are nonfiction writers, and they're trying to scale their business. They're trying to grow their business. And one of the ways to do that is by getting speaking engagements and all of those sorts of things. And they want a book to sort of sell in the back of the room after they're done speaking. So they write a book. They're getting the money from those sales at their speaking engagements. And then next thing you know, people are asking for another book. So then they write another book. And now they're making more money. So you can make money. You're not going to make money immediately the day after you publish. I mean, you're going to make some money, but remember, you have to earn back, you know, everything that you spent already. So I just caution authors all the time that, you know, without being a celebrity, you're not going to get rich quick. You're not going to get one of these, you know, $1 million advances, but you can certainly earn a respectable living publishing books. And many, many people do it. And I'm sure Angela can speak to that as well. So, okay. Myth number 4, self-publishing is for people who can't get a traditional book deal. I would say this is another blast from the past. This is absolutely the way it used to be. But this is not the way it is anymore. It's really a choice these days. And again, going back to the control, I'm sorry, I keep repeating that, but that's the big thing. You're choosing to self-publish because there's no need for you to have that gatekeeper of the literary agent or the book publisher saying, you know, no, this isn't for us. No, this isn't for us. You know, just do it, get it out there, publish it yourself and get it out there. Don't let someone else tell you yes or no. Now, I don't know I don't know as much about what the numbers are for fiction, but for nonfiction, book publishers generally expect you to have a platform and an audience of 2,500 people. So that number varies, but right now, 2,500 seems to be the sweet spot. So if you can basically, quote unquote, guarantee them 2,500 book sales, they're willing to give you a book deal. So again, why bother with the gatekeeper? I mean, maybe you don't have an audience of 2,500 people, and maybe you do, but you still want to have that control. It's not, you know, it's not the right way to publish anymore versus self-publishing being like the wrong, like sleazy way, which again is the way it used to be. But now it's all about making that choice. And there's lots of people who self-publish, and then a publisher will approach them later and say, hey, I'd really like to, you know, buy these 3 books that you did and buy the rights to your next 2. And then they'll help you, you know, market those first 3. That just happened to a friend of mine, actually. She writes hockey romances, and she finished a 3-book series and she's starting a new series. And the first book came out, and then a publisher reached out to her and said, you know, we really like this. You've got a good track record. We'd like to buy the rights to this new series, and we'd also like to buy the original series and, you know, sort of repackage them. So she was really excited about that. And then she would kill me if she knew I was telling the story. So I'm not going to tell her name. But when they repackaged the books, they changed the covers on her first series. And that was one of the things that she really loved about that series. And now she hates the cover of one of them. And it's this big, you know, brouhaha. So, you know, moral of the story, though, she self-published successfully, very successfully for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And now she's got a book deal, and she may or may not do it again. The cover thing kind of left a sour taste in her mouth, but she's riding it out to see how the marketing and all that goes. But so just my point is, just because you're self-publishing, that doesn't mean you're never going to publish traditionally. There's lots of people who do both. I mean, maybe you sign on with a traditional publisher to write a fiction book, and then you do a nonfiction book and self-publish it. So there's no reason just because you sign with a publishing house that you have to give them, you know, everything you're going to publish, as long as you don't sign a contract saying that they have rights to everything. But this is absolutely false, 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 false. Self-publishing is for people who choose to self-publish. So thank you, Angela. Okay. Excuse me, I'm talking so fast. I don't want to go over my time. So let's talk about who you need to self-publish. You can go big, you can go small. Let's see that next slide, Angela. There it is. Okay, so wish list. If you were going to hire everything out, and this again depends on your budget, which you create, you could hire an editor or editors. You could hire a developmental editor who will help you with the story and the structure and laying out the book, as far as you know, plot and pace and chapter organization, all of those things. You could hire a copy editor who is not going to, I mean, at that point, the book structure is pretty much set, and they're going through basically and doing like line editing, changing things for clarity, grammar mechanics for sure, but readability. You can hire a designer for the interior of the book. You can hire someone to do the cover. You can hire then a proofreader who, proofreading is done after the book is laid out. Developmental and copy editing are done before. So the proofreader will be basically, you know, like a last set of eyes just to catch anything egregious, you know, typos, spelling. They're not going to catch every single thing because you're not paying them the same that you would pay a copy editor. It's basically just, you know, like one last look. Let's make sure there's nothing totally egregious in here. And then let's get this baby into readers' hands. And then a launch specialist. You can, you know, a launch specialist, a publicist, there's lots of different terms for this, but they'll basically, you know, create a marketing plan for you. But you are in the right place because in a few minutes, Angela's going to talk about your book launch. And so you should not need a launch specialist. So those are all the sorts of people you could hire, again, depending on your budget. My advice to you at minimum is to hire a proofreader. The one complaint I still hear in the self-publishing, in the book publishing community at large, I should say, is that not enough indie authors are hiring editors or proofreaders. And so that is one way for someone to tell immediately if they're holding your book self-published and a traditionally published book from a book publishing house. That is one way to tell the difference. If your book is riddled with errors, listen, every book has errors. You know, that's just science. No one set of human eyes can find every single error. That's just, you know, that's just science. So the more times you go through a manuscript, as you know, the more you find. Go through it 15 times and hopefully each time you find fewer and fewer errors. Same thing goes with the editors. Heidi's saying in the chat, there's many who hire editors and then get crap work. Be sure to check references. Heidi, that's a great point. That's an excellent point, actually. And that gets in the craw of those of us who do things the right way, I have to say, as editors. And the reason that happens is because there's no certification in the United States to be an editor. Like there's no place you can go and get, you know, your, you know, a certificate of editing or anything like that. There are professional organizations like the American Copy Editor Society and the Editorial Freelancers Association, but there's no, you know, sort of like a governing body to say like, hell yeah, hey, she knows what she's doing. So anybody can say they're an editor and charge you for it. So yes, Heidi's saying, please be sure to check references. Absolutely. Check. I mean, that goes for anybody you're working with, but for sure an editor, because you want to make sure you're working with a professional editor and not, you know, for proofreading, when you're just looking for those egregious errors, if you want to hire, you know, your old school librarian who's retired and looking for some extra cash, absolutely. But if you are looking for, you know, big picture editing, you know, help me improve this book, then yeah, you need to make sure that you're getting a professional editor and, you know, vetting some references for sure. Thank you, Heidi, for bringing that up. So, but at minimum, proofread. You do it. I'm sure you'll have beta readers, that's not their job, but a lot of them will point out those mistakes, same type of mistakes. But before that book gets printed or uploaded to Amazon or wherever you're choosing to self-publish. Absolutely hire a proofreader. It's usually only a couple $100 and it is well worth the expense. So, okay, Angela, take it over. I'm going to have a drink of water.
All right. That was fantastic. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
I love the myths. That was my favorite part of it. Oh my gosh. Good stuff. Well, going off of that, so launch specialists. Here are the 6 steps that you need to make your book launch, of course, a smashing success. These are the 6 steps that I highly recommend just to simplify the process. Because with book marketing and book launching, there's so much that you can do, but if you have a process for it, it just makes it simpler and allows you to just go step by step to make it happen. So the number one thing I recommend doing is doing your research. So what does that involve? Well, you want to find your readers. So you want to do your research so that you can market your book to your readers where they are at. And there are 5 questions that I recommend asking. Number 1, what is their age group? Are you marketing to children? Is your book more appropriate for teens or preteens? Is it the new adult genre? Who are those people that you're marketing towards? And then what are their hobbies? And this is a fun one because personally, I'm a huge gamer. I actually have an iPad that's just dedicated to playing games, and I absolutely love it. And one of the games that I play a lot is Clash of Clans. And so my clan, we actually are so into the game that we actually meet on an app called Discord, which is for gamers. And you can all get into a chat room and have different conversations without worrying about sharing private information like email addresses and phone numbers. And so the top 3 topics that we talk about, of course, the game. Then we also talk about beer, because there are a lot of guys in the group, so that's a huge topic. And then for some reason, books is also another huge topic. So I took advantage of the opportunity and I was like, oh, I write fantasy novels. Here's my book. Y'all should buy it. And they did. It was great. So that's one thing that you can use different hobbies that people have to, bring them around and make them your readers as it comes up. And then number 3, who has the buying power? So this is also something you'll want to focus on if you have books that are marketed more towards younger adults who don't necessarily have their own jobs and their own money. You need to think about who has the purchasing power. And this could be grandparents, parents, aunt and uncles, teachers, babysitters, just those people that will be buying those gifts for them. And then numbers 4 and 5, where do they actually hang out online and offline? And this is pretty important for any social media campaigns that you're planning, just determining, are they on Instagram? Are my ideal readers hanging out in Facebook on Facebook groups? Where are they? Where do they go for their information? Maybe there are certain blogs that they follow. Maybe there are certain forums that they're a part of. Maybe there are certain community groups that they really focus on, and that's where they gather and hang out, or conferences that they go to. So those are the 5 questions that you're going to want to ask when you're putting together your simple list for your ideal readers. Okay, moving on to number 2. So irresistible book cover. And Jody talked a little bit about this. So when you're self-publishing, you do have that control. I love that keyword, control, over your book cover. So that's really important. And of course, it can seem overwhelming when you're trying to decide what you want. And this is actually what I ran into when I was trying to figure out what cover I wanted for the 5 Warriors, because there were just so many different options. And I was looking at different fantasy covers and I just could not figure it out. So here's what I recommend doing if you need ideals for your book cover. So number 1, go to your local bookstore and go to the books in your genre and take a look at those. And take a look at what you like about them, and then also what you don't like about them, and kind of make yourself a list. And go through and look at, what do they have on the front covers, especially for your genre? Are those books more text-based? Do they have large graphics on the front? Do they have bold and bright colors? And you'll start to notice different trends, like if you're looking at mysteries and thrillers, which personally I read thrillers. Those are the number 1 books that I read. But their front covers tend to be very ambiguous, and they don't necessarily have a lot of photography and graphics on them. Some of them are just like huge words that are written out in a very ear way in order to be ambiguous. So that's really something that you'll want to take a look at when you're trying to decide what you want your book cover to be. And then when you're selecting your cover design, I highly recommend writing out the vision you have for your book and then talking about it with your designer. So if you're working with a professional designer, kind of talking through your vision with them will really solidify your ideals. Or if you're doing it yourself, also kind of writing out your vision and seeing how close that you can create your book cover will really help. And I don't necessarily recommend creating your own book cover unless you are more of a graphic designer and you have a really good eye for design. I found it extremely helpful to work with a professional. Well, number one, I'm not a designer at all, but it also helped because once I had my vision down, the first cover that she did, I absolutely loved. Like, I honestly had no changes. In the end, we ended up reading the font for it because it looked a little bit too, I guess Arabian is the word. It didn't have enough of the fantasy in it. But aside from that, we probably think it was because of the research that went into it ahead of time, and then also having a vision for it. And then number 4, with social media sites and social media communities, I've noticed a lot of people are actually crowdsourcing their book cover designs. And so with these questions, should that be something that you do? And so what it is, people will take, about 3 or 4 concepts for their book covers and they'll post it in a Facebook group. I've seen this a lot, and they'll ask people what they think. And while initially that's a good idea, what it also does is it gives a lot of people who may not necessarily be your ideal reader a lot of input about your book cover. And so sometimes you can end up having hundreds of comments about it, and that's a lot to wade through. So if you do decide to crowdsource your book cover and get opinions from people, make sure that they are your ideal readers and they're actually people that can give you professional feedback and not necessarily like, oh, I would never read a book that looks like this, because different people are attracted to different book covers. Okay. Irresistible book cover done. Number 3, pre-order and pre-order bonuses. This is actually a ton of fun. So with pre-ordering, you can actually make your ebook and your paperback book available for pre-order. And one of the reasons I highly recommend doing this is because you can get people talking about your book and already buying it well before it comes out. And so I actually started my pre-order about a month in advance. If you are publishing your ebook through Amazon, they allow you to make your ebook available 3 months in advance. And you may notice if you go online, some traditional publishers have paperback books and ebooks available sometimes like up to a year in advance. And that's because they're using the special program in order to be able to do that. So you'll be able to do it 3 months in advance with both the ebook and then the paperback, which there's a special hack for that, which I will tell you more about in a bit. Okay, so then you'll definitely want to budget for pre-order bonuses. And I absolutely love pre-order bonuses because if someone is buying your book, they get a little free gift as a thank you in order for doing that. And so with budgeting, again, like your book launch and you're publishing your book doesn't have to cost a ton of money, but you do want to think about a number that you're comfortable with. And so I recommend setting aside like different amounts for, your must-have list and then your wish list. So of course, like your proofreader, if your book design, like having someone else do that is a must-have, then that's something that should go in your budget. And then a number that you're comfortable using. If it's something that if you feel like $1,000 for a book cover is outside your price range and that's absolutely ridiculous, then don't budget for that. With pre-order bonuses, my budget for that was quite low, so I just did bookmarks, which was super easy to do. The number one reason I chose that is because I wanted people to have something tangible that they could hold in their hands, and then also something that they could give out to other people. So I gave them 5 bookmarks. And then with that, it was super easy because that's also something it just takes a stamp to like throw some bookmarks in the mail and send them out to people. And then with announcing those pre-order bonuses, I actually did that on my book sales page, which is step number 4, coming right up. And then I asked people to send me proof of purchase before I sent out their bookmarks. It didn't really matter too much, but I did want to have some control over that. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you have a way of tracking your pre-order bonuses that's not overwhelming for you. Okay, step number 4, book sales page. So I highly recommend having a book sales page because this goes back to allowing you to build your platform online. It's the one place where people can go that's on your website where it's super easy for them to see your book and learn more about it. And then they can also see the links to purchase. They can see what pre-order bonuses are available, how to fulfill those, and then they can also join your email list, which you're gonna want, especially if you're building your platform. One of the cons of having a book sales page, I would say, is that instead of sending people directly to Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or just whatever kind of platform you're using to actually sell your books, then they have an intermediate step by going to your website, seeing all this information, and then they still have to make another click to purchase. And as a marketer, we kind of want to make sure people only have one click to get to where they need to be. But I think a book sales page is valuable enough and provides enough information that I don't think that will hinder the process of people actually purchasing the book and you making that sell. So here are the requirements I recommend for your book sales page. First of all, at the top, you need to have your book cover, big, beautiful book cover. And this is why your book cover is so very important, because it has to be attractive and draw people in and make them want to read the book. And then right beside it, having some teaser text. And this really depends on whether your book is fiction or nonfiction. That really depends on what your teaser text is, but it's not the book description. It's just something to hook people in, grab their attention, and make them more curious about the book. And so some people use reviews, some people use a little quote. For the 5 Warriors, I just use like a little what if, and then kind of put some speculation there so that people would be interested in it. And then right after that, you want to include the links to purchase. And so I actually recommend having the logos of different retailers available. So Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, IndieBound, just wherever your book is available, Apple Books, just having those links to purchase right below that. And then after that, having your reviews, your endorsements, your proof that this book is amazing, all these people are saying things about it, you should buy it. And then having your free sample available and having people opt in via email in order to receive it. So the ideal is if people are opting in via email, then you can follow up with them afterwards and eventually convert them into a paying customer, and they'll eventually buy your book. Some people are ready to buy immediately. They're just going to your book sales page so they can decide, where they're actually buying the book from. Are they getting the paperback? Are they getting the ebook? So those people will go ahead and make that purchase and buy. But for the people that aren't too sure and don't know too much about you, you want their email address so that you can follow with them later. Okay, number 5, book ambassadors. So I actually love this because one of the things with book marketing is that it can be hard to do all the marketing yourself for your book. And while you should be talking about it every day, it makes it a lot easier if you have book ambassadors who will talk about your book for you and rave about it. So those are exactly who your book ambassadors are. They are people who will rave about your book and then promote it for you. And one of the things that I did not do as well as I should have when I was releasing the 5 Warriors is that I did not intentionally put together a group of book ambassadors. They just kind of fell into my lap. I was meeting different people and they got really excited about it on social media. And so they kind of just took me on and became my book ambassadors. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I should have been way more intentional about that. So I highly recommend being intentional ambassadors. These are people that you can put on your launch team to help you with pre-orders, to help you get more reviews before your book comes out. And so the top 3 places I recommend for finding your book ambassadors. So number 1, Facebook groups. I absolutely love Facebook groups for this because it makes it super easy to meet and connect with people who are interested in the genre that you write for. And then also Instagram. I had no idea, but Instagram has a huge community for book reviewers and book bloggers. So that's also another way you can find book ambassadors, especially by searching different hashtags, like hashtag bookish. That's one for finding people to become your book ambassadors. And then direct messaging, reaching out to those people and asking them, do you want a free copy of the book paperback book in exchange for a review or to promote it on your account to all your followers, which is incredible. Number 3, LGBT events are also an excellent way to find book ambassadors. Things I did before I published the 5 Warriors is that I just picked one writing group in Nashville and got involved in it. And that ended up being incredible. It not only opened up doors to have book ambassadors, but I got to do a lot of different things like do a reading at Barnes & Noble's. That was incredible, and participate in their different book fairs at local libraries. So that was a huge way to introduce myself to a new group of readers, but it's also another way that you can get more book ambassadors. And of course, your book ambassadors are also your reviewers, and it's also the #1 thing I recommend doing to get more reviews. So before your book comes out on launch day, you do want to have a select group of people who read it and review it before it comes out. And so you can use your email list to boost reviews. You can use your group of book ambassadors, whether that's 50 or 100 people who got to read the book in advance. You can ask them to write reviews for you and post those on Amazon or Goodreads, just wherever you need those reviews to be on the day your book launches. And then also to continue to boost reviews, I recommend having review contests. You have flash contests every single month, or just however often you feel comfortable doing for people that have read your book and have left a review online. And there are different ways you can do that. I actually won an Amazon gift card just by being one of the first people to leave a review for a book. So that was really cool. And it doesn't have to be a 5-star review, but it does have to be an honest review that helps the book out. And then also you can use book ambassadors to continue to connect with book bloggers and reviewers. And I recommend doing this on an ongoing basis. I probably don't do this as much as I should, but Instagram is really the big hub that I use to connect with book bloggers and reviewers. I'll follow different accounts and then just direct message them and ask them if they're interested in reading the book. And for the most part, most of them are. And one of the best things about it is that you can send them the book, but you don't have to wait for them to leave a review. They'll start promoting it immediately. Like as soon as they get in the mail, they'll take a picture, they'll be super excited about it, they'll start posting about it and talk about how excited they are to read it. And one of the things that I absolutely love with the book ambassadors, especially on Instagram, is that they'll post your picture all throughout. There's this one girl who lives in Florida, and I sent her my book, and she read it and reviewed it, and that was all good and done. But now her account has doubled in size, and she still talks about the book all the time. Like she'll post about it, she'll include it in her different pictures, and it's really cool because instead of just getting a review, I also got a review and consistent promotion. So that's one thing you're going to want to look for with your book ambassadors. All right, final step 6. Parties and giveaways. These are my favorite parts. So when your book comes out, definitely have a party. So I recommend doing 2 things. Number 1 is having a virtual book launch party. And this can be on the day your book launches or the day after, just kind of around that time. And one of the reasons you want to have a virtual book launch party is probably if you have book ambassadors, they're not all in your same city. They're around the globe. So you definitely want to have one big celebration online where anyone can join, help promote your book, talk about it, share it on social media, just make it a big to-do. And hopefully you can get your hashtag trending. That would be really cool. But I also recommend having it for you. I actually use Compost Mine because number 1, they already had a huge group of readers, and that was excellent. So that introduced it to my book to their audience and a brand new audience for me, which is what you always want with your book, introducing it to new audiences who will buy it. And then also I didn't have to stress about, okay, like what's the agenda for the event? What giveaways do I have to do? What contests do I need to do? I just got to sit back and just engage and interact with people. And also it took away from like kind of the awkwardness of like trying to promote yourself and saying, hey, I wrote a book, it's awesome, you should read it. The host was able to do that for me, and I was just able to sit back and answer questions. So that was something I highly recommend doing. And then the second thing I also recommend doing is having an actual live book launch party for the people that live where you live. And so I actually did this. I had a small one. but it ended up being a lot of fun. And it was awesome because it's one way you can sell a lot of books and recoup your funds that you spent, that you invested in your proofreader and your design, and then anything else that you really wanted to do for your book launch. So this was great. I sold a ton of paperback books. It was crazy. Everyone came prepared to buy books. I had no idea. And I wasn't as prepared as I could have been, but it was amazing. And it was a ton of fun. I had like a whole agenda for it, lots of champagne, little like gifts for everyone that came there. We had a little quiz that was fun to interact with. So people were able to, you know, do a little bit of socialization and engage with the book a little bit before they actually read it. And that kind of encouraged them to buy it. Everyone got autographed copies. And then one of the great things I did was I read a chapter out loud, and that was live streamed. So I actually had I called her my live stream manager, but it was my cousin. She actually just walked around with my phone and live streamed the event, which is great because if you are the guest of honor and you're the author, you can't be on your phone at all. So having someone else live stream your event is a lot of fun. And at the time, Periscope was super popular, so that's what we use. Probably want to use Facebook now. But that's also another great thing to do. And then people online who can make it to the event were able to sit back and kind of watch it unfold and then like hear a chapter from the book. And that, of course, encouraged them to go buy the book. And then a few other things I recommend doing. You can do these at your launch party, whether you're a virtual one or you're a live one. You can do gift cards, do different giveaways there. You can give away book swag. I gave away bookmarks, magic potion. I gave away tea so people could drink tea and read the book. You can even create a book box. It just really depends on your budget and how creative you want to get with your giveaways. And then also, I also recommend giving away autographed copies of your book. And I recommend doing this not necessarily on your book launch day because you want people to buy the book. But, you know, a few weeks afterwards or the month after, I'm going to help the book buzz just give away paperback copies. That should help as well. So those are your 6 steps to planning an epic book launch, making a dispatching success. And your final steps are to actually take action. You've heard us talk about a lot of different things today that are amazing, but you definitely want to not just listen, but take action. Write your book, plan your book launch, and then go ahead and hit publish. And let me actually come back to being face-to-face with you. Awesome, guys. We actually have 2 amazing offers that I want to tell you more about. There we are. Awesome.
That was awesome info.
Yeah. Good deal. But oh my gosh, you're so amazing. We do have 2 offers, which I do want to tell you about. I'm going to go ahead and turn them on. Jody, you have a book coming out. You want to tell us more about that?
I do. Yes, I do. I have a book coming out on self-publishing, actually. So I can show you the cover. It's not available yet, but
gorgeous.
It's called Write, Publish, Market. I love the cover. I usually don't love yellow, but I love this. I love the color or cover. So, so it's coming November 1st. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put actually in the chat right now. Actually, I'm going to put it on the offer, aren't you? So I don't even have to put it in the chat. So, but you can go to that link and you can enter your email address to get information when the book's available and the links and everything. And then if you send me a copy of a purchase receipt by November 11th, it comes out on November 1st. So the next Friday, I will do a drawing and I have a $100 Amazon gift card.
Oh, so, wow. That's a good one.
I like to read books, right? I know. Yeah. So
I love that.
I know. My husband's like, can we win that? I'm like, no, we can't win that. So.
Maybe have a friend do it and be like, I actually need this for myself. Oh God. So that'll be awesome.
But yeah, I'm really excited. It's the feedback so far has been good. And yeah, I'm hoping it'll help a lot of people. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, definitely
go. Tell us what you have going on.
Yeah, well, I have a book launch course. So those 6 steps that y'all heard me talk about very briefly in 30 minutes is actually a full-on course, and you can actually enroll in it for 50% off. So that is down under offers. If you want to click that link, there you go. So
I have to say, and I'm not just saying this, everybody. I took Angela's course,
Yeah,
you know, in preparation for my book launch, because I'm usually behind the scenes as the editor, not, you know, doing it. And it is chock full. I mean, if you thought she gave a lot of information today, she just scratched the surface. It's such good info. And I mean, that's a great deal. So sign up for that for sure.
Yeah. It was so much fun. Yeah. And Jody, you enrolled so early, the course wasn't even finished. And since you've enrolled, there's now a workbook that you can print.
Oh, get out.
There is a book budgeting worksheet that you can also
nice
together your own
that's
budget.
Huge.
Yes.
Awesome.
So, you know, you can see.
All right, I'm gonna have to log back in then.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a good part.
To log back in. I got a couple more weeks. I got some time.
Yeah, you have lifetime access. So every time it updates,
awesome.
You're already in.
Awesome. Oh, that's great.
Well, good. So y'all definitely check those out. Click on those links. You may want to open them now before the webinar ends, and make sure you have your tabs open. We'll be sending out a replay after this, but make sure you have those so you can take a look. And then let's open it up for questions. What questions do y'all have for us? Ask us anything. I'll go with the first question since I'm here. Hybrid publishing, Jody, have you heard of that term?
I have. It's new. It's new. It used to be sort of what I was talking about, where someone self-publishes and then goes with a publishing house. So it's sort of morphing out of that and into becoming something new that's sort of still being defined. But it's definitely something people are in publishing we're keeping our eyes on. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I like that they used to be two separate industries, and they're sort of like morphing together now, which is what I think it should be, because, you know, there's room for everybody. There's lots of different ways to get to market. And, you know, like I said before, there's no one right way. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that was a new term that I heard that I really hadn't heard before. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. And I like that there is room for everyone, because it's not like smartphones. You don't have like Apple and Android, make your choice in the story. Like, people read books all the time.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think Amazon says they do, I mean, like thousands of books a day are published. I mean, there's something out there for everybody. So I tell my clients that all the time too, when they're like, oh, I don't know, do you think this is like a good enough topic? I'm like, every topic has an audience. If you just figure out how to find them, like you were talking about with your ideal audience and everything. So.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a good one. Okay. We have questions. Let's see. So one in the chat from John, he says, besides friends and family, where's the best place to find decent beta readers?
It's a good one.
So John, I recommend your community groups. So whether your Facebook groups or any groups that you're participating in your community locally, like those are also great places to find your beta readers. You can ask people, this is what I recommend doing when you're asking for them, like give them a time limit. So it's not just like, will you read my book and leave a review? Tell them that, you know, you have a book coming out and you need a review within the next 4 weeks, and you would love for them to read and review it. And then follow up with them at least 2 to 3 times after that date is passed, to make sure that you do get that review or that feedback from them. And that's great. And also make sure you're very clear on your expectations. With my beta readers, I didn't really need them to like correct the grammar or anything. I was like, there's an editor coming. So, you know, if it doesn't make sense, like just kind of skip over it. You can get the context from reading the entire chapter. Like just because one sentence doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. I just need to know, did it make sense? Were the characters shallow? Was the conversation stupid? Like that sort of stuff. So make sure you're clear on what you actually want to know from them.
What I did for my new book that's coming out was I did a type form survey. So it's free on typeform.com. And I gave them specific things that there was a chapter where I wasn't sure about this one section, if it was clear or not. So I was asking questions like specific about that, because sometimes people get overwhelmed when you're just like, hey, what did you think? And then they don't know what to say, but if you can kind of guide them along to get specifically what you're looking for, and that worked really great. And then the last question was just sort of like the review. Can you give me a review? So that's something else to think about. So.
That's so good. I love that, like, especially having that form, because I mean, it can be overwhelming, especially if the book is so huge and long.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, I had areas where I wanted specific feedback on, like, is this section working? Is the transition from this chapter to this chapter, like, too abrupt, or, you know, whatever. So, and I've had good luck finding betas on the Goodreads forums.
Oh, good.
So that's something, another place to check out. I do too. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So question number 2 from Logan. Hi, Logan. Do either of you have any experience with selling your books through indie bookstores? Great question. Jody,
you
say you're not yet.
Hopefully soon.
Yes, very soon. So like, yes, I do. So typically bookstores will want to know if they can return the book. They will want it typically for 40% off, 40 to 50% off the list price. And then they want to know if we have extra stock, can we return it? And so, I mean, all the answers to those questions are yes. It just kind of depends. I have bookstores buy books directly from me instead of going through a reseller like Create Space or Ingram, just because it's so much easier for me to, you know, take in the books with the invoice. And then if they have anything left over, it's easy for me to go pick it up instead of having to handle all this shipping nonsense. So I actually do sell my books in local bookstores in Nashville. There is one bookstore that's geared towards indie authors. It actually was started by the author Ann Patchett. She created it because so many bookstores went out of business in the Nashville area. And so they really do have a heart for indie authors. So they do a lot of events. They sell indie author books. And so what they actually had was a form online for me to fill out. And I did that. And then after that, they were like, sure, your book's approved. You know, bring a copy in with the invoice for 40% off. If it doesn't sell, we want to be able to return it to you. And of course, it sold. They paid the invoice. It was great. So definitely like go ask them what the requirements are. And, you know, it's pretty easy to meet the requirements. Ask them how much inventory they want to start out with. So if they want 1 book or 5 books or 10 books, you know, just however that looks, because they really have to think about their shelf space as well. And so they want to put up something that they know is going to sell and that's in demand. Another thing you can also do to help get your book into other bookstores like Barnes & Nobles and Books A Million is that you can have people go to those bookstores and ask for your book.
Ask for it.
Yeah. And if the bookstore doesn't have it in, they can actually order them offline and get them into their stores. So if you have like friends and family and you're like, go to Barnes & Nobles and like everyone go on like, you know, different days or like 1 month, we're going to focus on getting my book in Barnes & Nobles locally, have people go there and like ask the sales reps for people if they can bring that book in. And then they don't really have to buy it. They can just be like, oh, I changed my mind, or I got it from somewhere else. And then your book is just hanging out on the shelf where people can see it. Yep.
One of the ugly things we talk about in publishing, or don't talk about in publishing, I should say, is returns. So the easier you can make it on those indie bookstores to return the books if they need to, the happier they'll be to carry it, because that is that's the reason why they don't carry a lot of indie books, or didn't used to, because they couldn't return them, because any bookstore can return books from a publisher. So, I mean, a publisher can say, you know, like, oh, well, Barnes & Noble ordered 10,000 copies of this book, so we're going to print 30,000 copies of this book and sell, you know, the rest. Well, Barnes & Noble could sell 200 copies and return, what, 9,800 copies to the publisher, and the publisher has to take them back. That's part of the reason the publishing industry is doing so lousy. And that's why there's so many books that you're like, oh, didn't this book just come out? When you go to Barnes & Noble and that, like, whatever they call that section, like right at the front where all the cheap books are. Remainder books, because if they don't sell quickly, they want to turn them over, return them, get them out of there, and make room for, you know, on their shelves for new things. So, and the indie bookstores are smaller, so they have even less shelf space to work with. So they don't want to risk having something they can't return. So if you can make it easy for them, it's a no-brainer for them then.
Yeah, and just to follow up, Logan, on the second part to your question, yes, I did have to buy my book from Create Space. But they actually cost me anywhere between $5 to $7 per book. So it's super cheap. And that includes shipping. So it's really cheap for me to like get copies of my own book. So if I just want 1 copy or 5 copies, I tend to keep between 15 to 20 copies on hand at all times, because I'll have people come in and visit and they'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't pick up a copy for book yet. And I'm like, oh, here you go. It's $15, and then, I make $10 profit off of that, which is, it's kind of high if you think about it.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a great way. And I always recommend having copies of the book on hand because you never know. I went to a family funeral and sold books, and I know that sounds terrible, but I didn't do it intentionally. It just kind of happened because like that was the only stuff. It sounds awful.
No, that's so funny. That's a great story.
But yeah, the book's sold, so just make sure you have them on hand. You can have an extra $10 all the time. Oh wow,
That's a funny story.
yeah, but yes. Any other questions? Anything else you need to know? Wow. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We are actually a little bit over our hour too, so that's great.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks, everybody.
yeah, thank you everyone for joining. This is great. I'll set out the replay too, so you want to watch it again. If you have any questions, you can always contact us as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have our website information. You can get to us.
You can find us. You can track us down.
Yeah. And Jody, I want to thank you so much for coming on and co-hosting with me. This has been incredible.
This has been so fun. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day. And don't forget, we want to see your published books. So,
Yeah.
all right. Bye.
Take care, everybody.